Hare Krishna, everybody.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
I hope you can all hear me and see my screen as well.
Yes. Thank you.
I hope all of you had a good Diwali celebration and all of you are doing well in all respects. In a 2-week break after we are resuming the class, so I think the theme is continual, so I don't think we'll need to go back and revise. So the discussion is about how the soul is not subject to any kind of changes. It's not subject to death, and that's the discussion going on. By the way, I know I was late in updating the recording of the last class, and that's my bad. I was just occupied with other things going on, and then I had a Diwali break, so I'm sorry about that. But I did upload the video and today, and then I just shared the link. So what I'll do is, so we're going to start from verse number 19, but what I'll quickly do is, last time we discussed verses 17 and 18. So I'll just go through the translation so you get an idea what the discussion was.
Jamin Bhai,
Yes.
your screen is very fuzzy today. Is it just me or is it others are seeing the same thing?
Can anyone else confirm if you're...
Yeah, seems okay
It's
seems
okay
fine
for
for
me.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll dial out and dial back in.
Okay.
I think there is some feature in Microsoft Teams where the screen gets blurred, so you may need to see that whether you have activated that.
At least from my end, I'm not blurring my background.
No, not from your side, but from our side, we have an option for individuals.
Carmen, you want to drop off and log in again, or? Okay, she just
I think
dropped.
she already dropped out. Yeah.
Okay. So I just wanted to quickly go over the translations from last time, because it's been a 2-week break, and then I think some of you were not present in the class. So again, as I say, it's a discussion. The ongoing discussion is essentially about the nature of the soul, how the soul is immutable, it's not subject to changes. In verse number 17, Krishna says that that which pervades the entire body you should know to be indestructible. Is it any better now? Are you able to see my screen clearly? Parliament.
It's all right. Go ahead. I'll figure it out. You continue and I'll
Looks like
figure
it's
it out. Thank you.
Okay. So I was just mentioning the verse number 17 and 18 that we did last time. So verse 17 says that which pervades the entire body you should know to be indestructible. No one is able to destroy that imperishable soul. So the symptom of the soul is consciousness, and the consciousness is that pervades the entire body, right? So I'm completely conscious of whatever's going on within my body, especially any kind of sensations. Now, I might not sense, how the blood is being pumped. Like, for if I put my hand on my heart, I can feel the heartbeat. But any kind of sensation throughout the body, any pleasures, any pain, um, so all of that is easily perceived by the body. Even when there is a local anesthesia applied, that part of the body just becomes numb. Now, if somebody is, say a doctor or a surgeon is operating on that part, and because it's numb, we don't feel the pain, but we at least feel that, something's happening in that area, right? So the tactile sense does not completely disappear. So in this way, we are fully conscious of what is going on in our body. So the consciousness pervades the entire body. That's what Krishna says in verse number 17. And so in verse number 18, he says that the material body of the indestructible, immeasurable, and eternal living entity is sure to come to an end. And so these three characteristics of the soul are described. So that soul is indestructible, it is immeasurable, and it is eternal. So it's, of course, we looked at the dimension of the soul. So some approximate dimension of the soul is given. So if we take the tip of the hair and divide it into 10,000 parts, size of 1,000. So it's basically 1/10,000th of the tip of the hair is approximately the size of the soul. And the reason why it's so small that it can, because the soul is actually embodied based on its karma, it acquires different kind of bodies, and then soul, could fit into a microbe, which is so minute, so it has to be smaller than that. And the same soul could be, in the body of a whale or an elephant. And in that case, the consciousness would pervade across that huge body, right? Just like a driver, right? I mean, I can drive a bike or a small, a Volt, is it Honda Volt? Like it's it's an electric car, pretty small. Or I could be driving a F-350, right, or a Freightliner. But in either case, I'm the same driver. The vehicle that I might be driving could be different. Similarly, soul acquires different biological bodies. So Krishna is telling Arjuna that one should not lament for the loss of body. The soul is indestructible. So if you're really worried that that you're going to harm that individual, because you're attached to your grandfather or your teacher, be assured that nothing's going to happen to them. Of course, the body would be destroyed, and so the primary consideration for should be one's dedication to duty. As a Kshatriya, his duty is to fight. Okay, so having said that, let's start with verse number 19. Ya enam vetti hantaram yaschainam manyate hatam ubhau tau na vijanito nayam hanti na hanyate. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Neither he who thinks the living entity the slayer, nor he who thinks it slain is in knowledge. For the self slays not, nor is for the self slays not, nor is slain. So here's like a play of words, right? And so one has to really understand and parse it, what it's trying to say. So in Sanskrit, the play of the word is using the word hanyate, right? So here hanti, you see, is appearing. So hanti means kills, hanyate means that which is killed, right? And then hatam, again, hatam means hatam and hantaram. So see, it's all coming from the same root. So hantaram is the killer, hatam means killed. So that is translated in the translation as slain, slayer, right? So there is a play of words over here, but essentially what it is saying is, let's parse it. Let's parse what it's saying. So neither he who thinks the living entity the slayer. So that's the first part. So the living entity is not the slayer. That means in this case, if Arjuna is neither he who thinks the living entity the slayer, nor he who thinks it is slain is in knowledge. So who is in knowledge? So the characteristics of person who is in knowledge is that one who is actually seeing the truth. That individual, what does he see, right? What does that individual see? The individual sees that that the living entity is not the slayer. So if Arjuna, say from Krishna's perspective, Arjuna is acting out of his dharma, right? And even otherwise, like if he's killing the enemy soldiers, right? So he is not the slayer. How? We will talk about that. Nor he who thinks it is slain is in knowledge. So the body is slain. Essentially, what Krishna is saying, that when one person is killing another person, right? In case of war, right, over here, or in other circumstances, the soul is not the doer. The soul is not killing it, right? The body, which is acquired by the soul, is acting according to its nature, right? According to the gunas. One is forced to act in certain ways. And later in Bhagavad Gita, we'll study how the modes of nature are acting. So gunas refer to sattva gun, rajogun, and tamagun. So you can think of our material body, what everything, all kind of matter is combination of these three modes. Just like red, green, and blue colors, they combine in different combinations to form all kind of variety of shades that are possible in the world. Just three colors. Similarly, everything that is matter, right? It could be different species, it could be nature of people or objects, or everything is a combination of these three modes. Just like in a digital world, like if you look at this, any kind of electronic appliances or instrument that we use, so we're using a laptop or a cell phone, right? So there's an operating system. An operating system is made out of it's all a combination of zeros and ones, right? Now the operating system actually runs different kind of apps or programs. Now those programs are also combinations of zeros and ones, and these programs, they process different kind of files or objects, which could be pictures or text or audio or video. So all the data is also combination of zeros and ones. So you see, just zeros and ones, they combine in different permutation and combination to create operating system, the programs, and the objects which are processed by. So that is what is called binary. Similarly, in God's creation, everything in God's creation is a ternary creation. And by ternary, what I mean is that, Krishna uses sattva gun, rajogun, and tamogun. These three gunas, they combine in different proportions and in different combination and sequence to create everything that exists in this creation. So the 24 elements which I talked about earlier, they are all combination of these three modes, first of all, and then there is other variety. Now, this 24 elements are not actually physical elements, but if you have some background in object-oriented programming, you have class definitions, and then there is an instance of that class. So you can define a program where you say, okay, I'm going to define, I don't know, let's say an animal, right? So you can say class herbivore, right? So, or you can even say class animal. Now, from that, another class that is derived is a herbivore animal, but that is still a class. Now, from that, you can derive another class, a specific herbivore. Let's call it a deer, but it's still a class. It's not an object. Now you can instantiate that class into an object, right? And then you can call it deer A, right? So now that's an instance of that class. So similarly, Mahavishnu's creation is also like that. So the 24 elements that Mahavishnu creates, it's described in Srimad Bhagavatam in detail. How everything, initially the three modes are in balance, and so there is no variety, there is no creation. When Sattva, Rajo, and Tamagun, they are in perfect balance. That state is called it's called Pradhan. And then when the imbalance is created, then we identify it. That means there is more goodness. In the mode of goodness, when the ego combines with the mode of goodness, the class definition for mind is created. When ego combines or identifies with mode of passion, when passion increases, the class definition of intelligence is created. When the ego identifies with mode of ignorance, tamoguna, the class definition of the senses are created. And then there is further variety. Then the senses are further divided into knowledge acquiring senses and working senses, right? So I've talked about that earlier. Then the mind further divides into different sense perceptions. So what are the sense perceptions that the mind perceives, right? Which is smell, taste, sight, touch, and sound. The audible perception. This is how we perceive things. Again, these are all class definitions. It's not the actual sound. And then the five gross elements which embody this perceptions. So what is where is smell embodied in? Smell is embodied in earth, right? Where is taste embodied? The taste is embodied in water, right? Then where is the sight or the form embodied? It's embodied in fire, because fire is the first element that we can see. You cannot see air, you cannot see sound. And then similarly, the touch is embodied in air, and the sound is embodied in ether. So these five gross elements, their class definitions, they are further expansions of there is the idea of chit, which is perverted consciousness. So in this way, all these 24 elements, those class definitions are first created. They are all combinations of these three modes of nature. Everything begins from sattva, raja, tama, and they combine in different proportions. It could be very technical, but the idea I'm trying to give is that if you think of this mouse or this table or different kind of species of life, different nature of people, like you can say cow is more in mode of goodness, bear is in mode of ignorance, it sleeps, hibernates for 6 months, tiger is a very passionate animal. So when you see all this, say all these words, you can ascribe the qualities to different things. Even like, if I'm using an office desk on which my laptop is right now, you can go to a shop and you can see different kind of designs. And, some designs are very simple, and you can see they're very, in mode of goodness. Some are very rich, very opulent, and very intricate in design. And you can see, this is more like, there's a lot of passion and art in that creation, that table. And sometimes, some tables you can say they are more in mode of ignorance. For instance, some people, they are just had, they could create, like you could make this thing appear like, bones or skulls, and there are so many, like just in artistic form, right? That's again very tamasic in that ignorance. Just by looking at certain things, you would just like, if you see a lot of artwork or decoration during Halloween time, right? That entire theme is very the ignorance is very predominating. And so I just gave you one example, but if you analyze everything, there is last two chapters of Bhagavad Gita goes into detail of how even charity is considered good, but charity could be in mode of goodness, passion, or ignorance. Like, somebody could do, make a donation to a terrorist organization. That's also charity. But what's the purpose? The purpose is very horrible. Um, there are political contributions. Right now you just ended our election season, and every day you might get a text message or email from the Democrats and Republicans. They want to raise funds. So for political reasons, you can do a contribution, and that's in mode of passion. And one can do charity for a good cause, those who are needy and who are worthy of receiving those contributions. That's in mode of goodness. Fasting could be in mode of ignorance, passion, or goodness. So anything, you could divide into different modes. So the idea is here, what Krishna is trying to say is that people, and now these modes are also changing. We might sometimes are more in mode of goodness, sometimes we are more in mode of passion. And one who really understands how these modes are working, that person is in knowledge, and that person sees that this individual who is acting is forced to act according to his nature. And so this material body, which is made up of gross senses and which is influenced by the mode, is acting. The soul is not the actor. Now, because the soul is thinking that I am not the soul and I am this body, that soul is subjected to karma. But otherwise, one who is actually seeing in knowledge, he sees that, well, the soul is not the doer. Right? The actually body, which is made up of modes, is forced to do it. That's the essence of what it's trying to say. Similarly, one who is in knowledge, that person does not think that the soul is slain, because again, whoever is getting killed, it's the body is getting destroyed, not the soul. Why is the individual thinks? Because for the self is neither for the self slays not nor is slain. That means in either cases, the killer who is killing, right? Again, that person is acting according to the modes. The soul is not the actor. Like in the beginning, if you remember, I'd shown you a picture of the chariot analogy. Do you remember that? If you have a Bhagavad Gita copy, you can look it up on the pages. What is the soul chariot analogy? There is a famous picture. I think I might have shown you earlier. Like if you look at this picture, you see each horse has a sense organ associated with it, right? So the horses are going in different directions, just like our senses are pulling us in different directions. The sight, smell, tongue, touch, ear. So the mind is compared to the reins, because mind is neutral. If the horses are more powerful, the reins will go in that direction. If the driver is more powerful, it will restrain them. So mind is actually stuck between the senses, which are like horses, and the intelligence. So if intelligence is sharp, then one can control the horses through the mind. So mind is a very passive organ. And the gross body is the chariot. Where is the soul? The soul is right over here. I can think of this analogy as a passenger on a, I gave this example many times. I might be riding my own personal car or an Uber. And so if my own personal car, I identify with the car. So if the car, is damaged in a crash, then I feel really bad about it. Right? But if I'm in an Uber, I'm like, hey, this is not my car. Nothing happened to me. I'm just going to hop out and, move on. So we feel the pleasures and pain to the extent that we identify ourselves with our belongings. Similarly, to the extent that we identify ourselves with the body, we feel the pleasures and pain. So the same concept applies. One is when one identifies oneself with the body, then that individual is thinking, oh, I am the killer and I'm killing that individual, because one is not able to see the truth. But one who is in knowledge is able to see the truth, right? So Srila Prabhupada mentions over here, when an embodied living entity is hurt by fatal weapons, it is to be known that the living entity within the body is not killed. The spirit soul is so small that it is impossible to kill him by any material weapon, right? So we talked about it's so small, you can't even hurt it. Sometimes, like if you have a sword, you can maybe kill other people, or horses could be slain, or an elephant can hurt those who are in big bodies. But if you try killing a fly, house fly, or a mosquito with a sword, it's not going to work. Right? So it's much more smaller. So similarly, soul is even way more smaller than any house fly or a mosquito. So no kind of weapon can kill it just because of its sheer size. And subsequent verses will also now learn that soul cannot be affected by fire or air or water, and so either quantitatively or qualitatively the soul is not affected. Nor is the living entity killable because of its spiritual constitution, right? So one is size, another thing is the qualitative difference, right? Because it's not matter. Soul is not matter, it's spirit, and so matter cannot make any impact on spirit. What is killed or is supposed to be killed is the body only. This, however, does not encourage killing of the body. So this philosophy could be misused. Well, somebody might say that nothing's happening to the soul, so we can take lightly and kill without any discrimination. But that is not the implication. The Vedic injunction is ma himshyat sarva bhutani, never commit violence to anyone. Nor does the understanding that living entity is not killed encourage animal slaughter. So one might say that, okay, you can apply this rule just for humans, thou shall not kill. But if it was just meant for humans, then it should be thou shall not murder. When you say thou shall not kill, means killing applies to not just humans, it also applies to animals. So that's why animal slaughter is not encouraged in Vedic culture. Nor does the understanding that living entity is not killed encourage animal slaughter. Killing the body of anyone without authority is abominable and is punishable by the law of the state as well as by the law of the Lord. So that's why there is capital punishment awarded when any human life is lost, right? Now, that rule in the current society is not applied to animals, but according to the laws of the nature, that rule applies even to other species of life. So Arjuna, however, is being engaged in killing for the principle of religion and not whimsically. So the other example that is again given is a soldier goes to a war front and is acting in the direction of the superiors, and that soldier might even get awards or medals for killing the enemy. But the same individual as a civilian, when he comes back to his hometown and maybe he's going through a post-traumatic because of the war, he is going through a distress, and they have all this trauma, and maybe he loses his mind, takes a weapon, goes to the local Walmart and shoots people. Then he's not going to get any award, rather he would get a punishment. So that is a difference. So here Arjuna is not acting according to his whims. He's acting, he's being to act according to the principles of dharma, and so is not subject to any reaction. Okay, I want to take a pause and open it up for any questions or comment. This might be a little difficult to understand, and that's why I spent a little bit more time, but I just want to make sure everyone understand that the idea that I'm not the doer it takes a while to understand that concept. To the extent we identify ourselves as the doer with the body, we are subject to the reaction, right? But to the self-realized souls who, they really know that, they don't identify themselves with the body, and they act only as a matter of duty, and that is not subject to karma. But as long as we think we are the doer, or we are the body, then that's why the karma applies. Otherwise, the karma won't apply. So the identification with the body, again, it's not a. We can begin by theoretical understanding and we can technically analyze it, but by spiritual practice, that realization comes. Okay, any questions, comments? Anyone? No?
Prabhuji,
Okay.
in the last class, you had mentioned something about souls having some form of like miniature form of limbs as well.
Yeah, the spirit. So the biological body obviously has a different kind of forms, right? So in the human form of life, all the limbs and everything is developed. But other species of life, like a reptile, right? You don't see any. I mean, they don't have limbs, but the form is there. Now, below the biological body is the subtle body. The subtle body also has a form, and that means there are working senses. The 24 elements, the class definition that I talked about, right? After 24 elements, you have 5 working senses and 5 knowledge acquiring senses. Those working and knowledge acquiring senses are also present in the subtle body, and that subtle body does not change from one species of life to another species of life. The same subtle body carries on, just like this hand fits into different kind of gloves. It's the same hand. The subtle body is like that. It fits into any kind of biological body. But below the subtle body is the spirit, and the spirit also has a form. And that spirit form also has senses, the working senses and knowledge acquiring senses, and that is the original nature. Now, how exactly those senses look, we don't have that experience or realization, but there is a form. There is indeed a form. Now, in spiritual world also, it's not just humans, right? Like Sukadeva Goswami, who spoke Srimad Bhagavatam, he's a parrot in the spiritual world. He's Radharani's parrot. He's Sukha. And there are cows in the spiritual world. So, and those bodies are not biological bodies. Those are completely spiritual bodies. But you see that spirit, if the body is completely spirit, it's not made up of matter. But definitely the body of a cow is very different from the body of a parrot, which is also very different from the body of the gopas, which is human. So it seems that it's not like all spirits, they have the same form. That's the you're trying to all understand this from an analytical way, but all we can say is that these features are there, right? The working senses and the knowledge acquiring senses, they are there, but the form is not same for everyone, right? You could see the form for a cow is, because even at a spirit level, right now we can see that, okay, that's biological bodies are different, right? But the spirit, there is a spiritual body below it. And even that spirit body in spiritual world, they acquire, it's not same for different species of life. So how do we understand that? Well, that's what we know, that it's not the same form, obviously, right? A parrot is very different from a cow. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, Prabhuji, it does. I mean, it was interesting for me because I had never heard of that. That the soul also has limbs for some extent. So I just wanted to understand that a little more. Yeah. So this helps, Prabhu. Another question. Yeah, Prabhuji, you're going to say something?
No, go ahead.
Another question, Prabhuji. We talked about how we are influenced by the 3 modes of nature, and our actions are based on that. Then how does free will interject here? Then, because we are also supposed to have some form of free will.
Right.
So how does that come into play?
Yeah, you can go back to the same analogy, right? So you can think over here, the driver, see the horses, they're deeply in the, everything is modes of nature, including intelligence, the mind, and the horses, and the chariot, except the soul. Everything is made up of modes of nature. Now, the there is a constant struggle between the driver and the horse, right? So if the horses are not trained, right, so they don't have a good rapport with the driver, and so they need to be trained, and so there is that constant struggle. Now, if one who really does not understand the mechanism, how everything is working, right? The passenger is clueless, and does not know anything about it. The driver is clueless, cannot control the horses. Then what will happen? The horses will go in wildly in any direction, and they might take you down a rough road, and we might encounter a crash, right? Uh, but if the intelligence is properly situated, right, that intelligence can control the horses nicely. And the intelligence, how is the intelligence influenced? The driver is influenced by the passenger. The passenger has to direct the driver, tell what is the destination I need to go, right? How you should ride, you should drive fast or slow, and this is where I need to go. Intelligence has to listen to the soul, right? So the point I'm trying to say, the free will is there to the extent we realize that we are spirit, and we understand how these things are working, and we try to influence our mind, we try to spiritualize our intelligence, we try to spiritualize our mind, we try to spiritualize our senses for a purpose. That, hey, this life I'm not going to simply waste for sense gratification, material achievements. My goal is afterlife, where at the end of this life I want to achieve spiritual perfection. That's my goal, very clear, and this is how I need to go in that direction, right? And so I direct my intelligence. Any time I have to make a choice, if I spiritualize my intelligence, my criteria for discrimination then becomes, is this thing going to help me for my ultimate spiritual perfection or not? Am I going, so that's how my discrimination criteria becomes spirit versus matter. But if the intelligence is not spiritualized, what will the intelligence do? Intelligence will discriminate between two grades of matter, right? Oh, this matter is better, or this matter is better, right? This, anything like this car is more luxurious, or this car is more luxurious. Or like if you just like if you go to Costco, and so many, you have this flat TVs, right? And then there are so many different technologies. You have LEDs and now QLEDs, and 4K, 8K, this resolution. Like, so intelligence, for somebody to really make a choice, the intelligence has to be so refined that it can discriminate between fine differences of matter, right? To a novice, they all look same, right? But one whose intelligence is trained in making discrimination in different gradations of matter can say, oh no, this is better than that. This is a different technology. That's a better technology. So the spiritualists, they might not have, they may or may not have that kind of ability to differentiate between matter. I mean, spiritualists can also have, just like the Sankhya philosophy, how it divides the matter into 24 elements. So the spiritualists are also expert in dividing matter. But beyond that, what is the main thing that they are good at? They can discriminate between spirit and matter. So to answer your question, the forces of the modes of nature are always acting. They are acting on somebody who is grossly materialistic. It's acting even on those who are undertaking a spiritual path. But the thing is, one individual is better trained to handle those forces, right? And the other individual is not. It's not even clueless. He doesn't even know that, oh, that I'm not the body. There is also mind and intelligence between the gross body. Like they don't even know how many layers of coverings are there, right? And they don't know how the interplay is happening between those different between the subtle matter and the gross matter, how the modes are acting. So that knowledge is not there. So they are completely overpowered. Sometimes they are put into extremely challenging situations. There might be a death of a relative that they cannot handle, or they are put into extreme poverty or financial loss, and they go into depression, right? So the forces are there. They are not able to handle it. But what's the difference between a spiritual person and material person? They are all put into the same situation, but one is, it depends on how we respond to the situation. That defines the character of an individual. Right? Everyone is put to challenges. It's a matter of time. But how do we stand up to those challenges? So the free will comes over there. One who is spiritually situated is able to withstand those forces, right? Otherwise, what happens is, just like one who has no control over senses, that person is ruined, even from a material perspective, right? Suppose I'm going through downtown, and okay, there is restaurant, there is nice fragrance coming. Okay, I'm going for some other purpose, even for a material purpose. I have an important meeting, but now I'm distracted. Okay, let me go and enjoy this food, and I come out, then next I come across a bar. Okay, let me go and have some drink, and there might be some theater going on. So so the senses are pulling us, and if we just respond to the demands of the senses, forget about spiritual perfection, even material perfection, we cannot get it. You're just simply distracted. So the free will comes in how we respond to those forces. Does it answer your question?
Yes, Prabhuji. So if I understand this correctly, our free will is in the way how I respond to a situation, and how I respond now will then influence in the future the experiences I am put against to.
Right.
Is that correct? Okay?
Yeah, to the extent we identify ourselves with those situations and are affected by it, we are entangled in karma. If we can withstand those forces, then there is no karma associated with it. So yeah, it just depends on how we are able to. Otherwise, the force, and we might not be able to do it 100% all the time. But we might be influenced and carried away, just like this driver. Even if he's an expert driver, if the horses, they are not trained, and a new set of horses the driver is working with, then he might have to work really hard, and sometimes he's wanting to pull them in this direction, but momentarily he might be swayed in another direction, right? But what he will do, because the driver is resolute in purpose and is trained, even he might be swayed for a few minutes to being pulled in that direction, he will bring those horses back. That is the difference between a trained driver and not a trained driver. So it's not that those who are even just taking up a spiritual path, you can feel, you can personally experience that it's not that every day is same, right? Sometimes we are overpowered by extreme extenuating situations, but it's just that based on the extent we have made progress will determine how quickly we are able to recover ourself and senses and be fixed. And with training, that time period just keeps getting smaller. Sometimes it might take initially, like depending on how extreme the situation, we might be affected by it for months, but slowly we see that months comes down to weeks, and then it might come down to days, and then hours and minutes. And sometimes those who are pretty advanced and situated, they might just feel something for a split second, and then they just ignore it, and then they are fixed in that situation. And then beyond that, just becomes your second nature. You're not even affected at all. So it all just like your muscle memory, it becomes by training, that perfection can be achieved. Hope that makes sense.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Yeah.
Can you go back to the picture again?
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand what all involved in subtle body of this picture, and what is a soul, and what is a body. Like, I'm trying to differentiate the things. Like, are the senses part of the subtle body, or it's only part of the of biological body?
I see what you're saying. So for this analogy, let's assume there is no gross body involved over here. Let's just say everything is subtle body. So the passenger is a soul. You can think of the chariot as the overall subtle body, and then the horses are the all subtle senses, the 5 subtle senses, and then mind is a 6th sense. That's why so that's also subtle, and then you have the intelligence. And why I say let's just call them subtle, because it really doesn't matter what kind of biological covering is further on top of it. Just like the hunger that the humans experience is no difference from the hunger that a dog experience, right? So the urges of the senses are not different. Now the way they are satisfied are very different. Like what humans eat is very different from a crow, what a crow eats or what a dogs eat. So they're gratified by different things, but the urge, or which is in Sanskrit they are called veg. The veg is like an impulse. The urges of the senses, that is unique to the subtle body. So that does not change. It's just that we identify because of the false ego. We identify with whatever the biological body we have acquired, and so then we are, because of that identification, the sense of hunger or sense of genitals or sense of tongue, it is satisfied by different things, but the underlying essence of it is same. Hope that makes sense.
Uh, so, uh, uh, except the soul, everything else in the picture is actually influenced by three modes of nature. Am I right?
Yes, yes. The only choice the soul has is that whether I identify with the chariot, the driver, or the horses or not. Just think of it. You're in a car. I don't identify self with the Uber, right? But you identify self with your personal car. And so that's all it matters. To the extent we identify ourselves with the ride and all the paraphernalia, we suffer the joys and the displeasures. Suppose I go on a business trip to Los Angeles, I'm just saying, right? And then, okay, I have to just be there for a day. And, I just want to get my job done and get out of it. So I really don't care where I might stay in a Motel 6 or La Quinta, and, it makes no difference. Because why? Because I'm fixed on my purpose. I'm here to get my job done, and I don't belong to this city. This is not my home. I have to go back to my home. And so we apply the same analogy to our current life. Then you say the spirit soul is eternal, will live for millions of years. This body, 100 years at the max, is nothing. I'm here for a very short duration. I have a purpose that I have to achieve. And so I really don't care whether I'm rich or poor or ugly or beautiful, or doesn't matter. It's just temporary thing. Let me focus on my spiritual goal, get it done and get out of it. But if you go with the same example, if the person who is visiting is lost in purpose, he forgets that I'm here for a business trip. And he says, first time visiting to LA, maybe from a foreign country, and he's so enamored by Hollywood. And so he say, okay, let me go down to Sunset Boulevard, and let me check out different things. He goes to the bar, he enjoys, and he has a party, and then he sleeps late, and he misses the business meeting the next day, and he say, I want to stay in the fanciest hotel. So he's lost in purpose, right? So he does not realize that he's here for a short time and there's a purpose. So the same concept, you take an example of either a car or a business trip, but to the extent that we identify ourselves, otherwise the soul will not feel any pleasure. Is not, okay, I have a short ride I have to take, if the road is bumpy, whatever, let's just get over it. It's not even bothered about it. It's a short ride, 10-minute ride. Okay, one of the wheel is broken of the chariot, okay, whatever, we'll get there in 5 minutes, right? So he's not so much worried about it. But if that individual identifies itself with the with the ride, and it's like, oh, I want the fanciest ride, right? So and he forgets the purpose, then he will experience the pleasure and pain. Oh, why is the ride so bumpy? Can you not take a better road? Why are you not driving properly? Can you change the wheels? Right? So now that person is feeling the pleasures and pain of it. Otherwise, if person is focused, he's not even bothered. Maybe just like, sometimes we see people are so much focused on work. They might be going on a bus ride or a car or even an airplane, and sometimes we see that there's turbulence in the air, but that person is so focused in the work, he's connected to Wi-Fi in his laptop, and he does not even realize that there's an air bump. Why? Because that individual is focused. It doesn't matter that seat is comfortable or not. So the identification is not there with the pleasures and pain, because the purpose is resolved. So same analogy again you can apply over here. That's why people who are very, individuals who are very self-realized, they are not affected even by any kind of extenuating situations. Is that
Got
good?
it. Thank you. Yep.
Okay. Any other questions? Good questions, by the way. I think is important. I don't mind spending time discussing these topics. It's very important to get all the doubts clear. Okay. So
Jamin bhai,
yeah.
I have one question.
Sure.
Jamin bhai, basically now, in our day-to-day life, like we are killing flies knowingly and unknowingly, so as the mosquitoes, and then when you are driving, you kill a lot of species which you might not be aware, which is living around. So how does it is considered as, is it considered as your sins, and then you need to pay for it? Because uh, I mean, because our philosophy says that whatever karma you did in this life, you need to pay in the next life. So how does it correlate over there?
Yeah,
I
that's
just
a good question.
had some, yeah.
So scriptures say, later in Bhagavad Gita also we'll see, say sarva arambi doshena domain agni iva anavrita. Every endeavor is covered by fault, just like fire is covered by smoke. And that's one of the final concluding arguments Krishna gives after speaking entire Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. He says, even the work that you're doing, there is some fault. You're going to kill your teacher. You're going to kill your grandfather. They're worthy of respect. Arjuna just says 3 verses ago, they're worthy of respect. Now I'm going to kill them, right? Is it not sinful? Yeah, it is. In a way, you can say that. But Krishna is saying that all endeavors have some fault. So, it's not that it's completely free of fault. But because you are situated in your case, Arjuna, you have to act according to your dharma. And when you're fixed in your dharma, then that becomes secondary. Now, going back to your question, in our daily activities, there's undoubtedly some knowingly, unknowingly, some sin is committed. So in the Vedic culture, there's always this prayaschit, and then there is this panch mahakarma. They say every day they offer sacrifices, on a periodic basis, like yagya, homam. There is prayaschitam, by which one atones for those sinful activities. Now all of that in modern life is very difficult to do those things. But by taking one thing is very easy. In Kali Yuga, it is made easy because everything else is so complex. He says, Kalo dosho nidhe rajan astihi eko mahan guno kirtanadevahi krishnasya mukta sangha param braje. So this Kali Yuga is full of faults. Kalo dosho nidhe rajan. It's like an ocean of faults. Like we go in a cruise ship in the middle of the ocean. There is an ocean in the north, in the south, east, west. There is water everywhere. Similarly, in Kali Yuga, anywhere you put a step, there is faults. But there is one mahan guna, astihi eko mahan guna. So if there is only one good thing about Kali Yuga, what is that good thing? Is kirtanad evahi krishnasya mukta sangha param vrajet. Just by doing glorification of Krishna and chanting his holy names, all kind of sinful reactions are completely destroyed. So not only sinful reaction which since we are committing right now, but sinful reactions which have accumulated for millions and millions of lifetimes, which have not fructified, they are all destroyed. Just by offenselessly chanting the name of Krishna once. So that is one great advantage. So we should not purposefully commit sinful activities on the strength of the holy name. That is offensive to do that. But in the course of our activities, some things that we are not able to avoid it. In previously, there were specific atonements that individuals used to do, and those are not possible. But that's why chanting japa is very important. And again, we are not chanting japa to get over our sinful reaction, but more so because it's pleasing to Krishna. But the byproduct of that is that one is protected from all kind of sinful reactions. And by nature, as one becomes makes advancement in spiritual life, one is very careful not to even though one is protected, one is careful not to harm other living entities. We see the example of that hunter Jara, who was half killing the animals, and Narada chastised him. He said, "You are a hunter, so killing the animals is not a big fault for you. That is your nature. But you're half killing them. That is very terrible." And so then he gives him a spiritual path. And then he comes after some time with some other individual, and he's like, "I'm gonna visit my disciple. He lives here in the forest." And then when that hunter has now completely changed, he's always chanting the names of Narayana, and he comes, and then while he's approaching, he's kind of walking very in a wavery fashion. He's asked him, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm just careful. I don't want to step on any ants." So you see that example that compassion naturally comes, and one tries to avoid as much as possible. Similarly, there is a story of Jad Bharat. Bharat Maharaj, a great devotee. In his next life, he becomes a deer, and the third life again, he becomes the son of a Brahmana. And then, but nobody recognizes him that he is spiritually advanced. And Maharaj Rahuguna, he engages him in lifting a palanquin, and he chastises him. Why you're not walking properly? You look like a very strong and a sturdy man, and you cannot lift a palanquin. And then actually, why he was stumbling was that while he was walking, he's paying attention to the ants down there, and he doesn't want to step on the ants. So now the other palanquin, there are 4 carriers. The 3 carriers, they are just walking straight. They don't care. They just want to make sure that the king is happy. So they're not stopping. But this guy, he stops, and so there are jerks. And Maharaj Rahuguna is very angry. First, he chastises. He taunts him, and then, "Oh, looks like you're a very weak person," but he was very strong. Then again it happens, and he chastises him, and then Bharat Maharaj speaks first time in his life. I mean, he was not dumb and deaf, but he acted like a deaf and a dumb all his life, so that no one bothers him. He just wanted to be fixed in his spiritual meditation. And then he speaks such a great philosophy that Maharaj Rahuguna is stunted, and then he bows down and asks for forgiveness, that he looked like a very spiritually elevated person. So that compassion naturally comes, though one is protected from such unintended sinful activities. One still takes care naturally to avoid hurting other creatures. I hope that answers your question. It's good.
So so now the compassion that you mentioned is it towards the other living beings, or um, I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to understand one thing. I concept wise, in terms of understanding how these things work, I kind of get it. Like, we need to keep our mind on Krishna all the time, and try to think of him all the time, so that we don't get distracted with other sensory things, and at the same time we can achieve the state where 3 gunas are balanced in our mind, so we can get the moksha, or
Spiritual perfection or spiritual
spiritual
form.
perfection. Yeah.
Yeah.
The concept wise, I kind of get it. I hope, I think, but I find it is very, very, very difficult to actually have that focus all the time. There are some times where I think, some days I think, I probably think of Krishna, or I probably think of any form of God, to just have that concentration whole day. But sometimes I find it is very difficult, and I could not, like, for example, if I'm too involved in my office work and too working on it, and at the end of the day I realize that, okay, today I did not even think about anything about Krishna. So I found it very hard to get that focus on Krishna.
Yeah.
That's the reason actually I started reading the stories of Bhagavan, like in Bhagavatam and everything. But still, I find it is very hard. I'm trying to understand. Um, I think, yeah. Is there any suggestion that you can give in the direction?
Yeah. So the thing is, we cannot mix two things. Like, say, Arjuna, when he's fighting, he's not thinking about Krishna is just behind him, right? So that is his good fortune. But Bhishma also, he's a great devotee of Krishna, right? So he's fighting, and when he's fighting, he's focused on fighting. So you don't have to mix two different things. And what is important is, on a daily basis, you have dedicated time of spiritual practice, where, say, if you're gonna chant certain number of rounds on your japa beads that take you 1 hour or 1.5 hours, say you chant 8 rounds or 16 rounds, whatever number of rounds you chant on the japa, just that time you have to chalk out from your schedule, and you should be just focused chanting, and so you don't get disturbed. Now, some people do it all in one session, or you could do over multiple sessions. It doesn't matter. Similarly, you could spend time reading, like you say you like reading Bhagavatam, and so that's good. You just focus at the time, you're not doing anything else. So then how do you become Krishna conscious 24 hours a day? The That's why the Vedic varnashram system is that there is pravrutti marg and nivrutti marg. So nivrutti marg is one is not engaged in any kind of prescribed duties, one is fully renounced. But the pravrutti marg is that we are affected by the modes of nature, and so we have to act. Just like Krishna is telling Arjuna, even if you go take sannyas, you will be forced to come back, because by your nature, by the modes of nature, you will be forced to act. So as a kshatriya, you think that I'll go, but it's not possible. You will be forced to come back. And so varnashram dharma, that's why it asks us to find out our nature and act according to our nature. And so the whole idea of varnashram again is satisfaction of Vishnu. So when we act according to our nature, because we are acting according to nature, that activity first of all is karma free, and then whatever results we get, right, from those actions, they are engaged in those results are offered as a sacrifice to Vishnu or Krishna. And then, so because of that, what happens is the work that you have done, right, all that becomes an act of devotion. Right now, that doesn't mean, so we are earning, like a weaver is weaving. Now, it doesn't mean that all that he is weaving is going to offer it or give it to Krishna, but a certain amount of cloth that weaver is weaving, he would either give it to the brahmanas or sannyasis, or make clothes for the deities. And then those are earning, doing hard labor. There are technicians and mechanics, they could use those skills again in the service. And those are earning income. The idea is that you take a fraction of income for your daily maintenance, and then you want to save some for emergency, and there is a fraction that you directly offer for spiritual purposes. Or traditionally the grasthas, it is homam, the fire sacrifices, and then feeding of the brahmanas. The brahmanas are they are not salaried, and so brahmanas have voluntarily accepted poverty. So the charity to the poor in Vedic tradition means to the brahmanas. They are not supposed to accumulate wealth, and so they live simply, and they don't have a livelihood of for their maintenance. So you feed those brahmanas, give them charity. They are supposed to take only what is required or necessary for them, and again, whatever is extra, they give it charity to others. So that is the traditional system. So coming back to your question, again, you might say, well, it's so difficult to find out what my nature is, but there are places in Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, the characteristics are described. And we should ideally take up a profession that is suitable according to our nature, and then you engage, you offer the results of your activities as a sacrifice of a fraction of it, and then that becomes an act of devotion, right? So how the Vedic system works actually, see, initially no one is interested to take up activities for spiritual purpose. We are all motivated by material purpose. We want to achieve something. So that is understood. So that the reason why it is structured is that what happens is, if we don't act according to our guna, right, we said, okay, I'll do this, though it's again against my nature, but it's going to give me a lot of material gain or remuneration. Then what happens is that our motivation to do the same activity next time would need more higher amount of stimulation, just like drug addicts, they don't get the same kick with the same dosage, to increase the dosage. So that stimulation every time needed is higher. And then what happens is eventually you cannot keep on extending it. And then, what happens is, we are completely depressed and, it's not sustainable. So the Vedic system says, okay, you want material gain. That's okay. But you act according to your nature. So what will happen is, initial motivation is, I want some material gain, but over a period of time, that just like I'm hungry, the first bite I take, I'm very satisfied. The second bite, I'm not so much satisfied, right? By the time it's the last bite, there is no incremental value in eating that, last of food. So similarly, the remuneration that I might will get over a period of time. Initially, there's so much gratification. I achieved this by doing my occupational duty, but then that gratification decreases. But then you still need something for his survival, so that keeps on going. But why is the person still able to continue to do it? Why that individual does not need higher amount of stimulation? Because he had initially chosen the profession or occupation according to his nature or her nature, then that individual will keep working, right? Then now what happens is, now that work is not materially motivated, so he's just doing because that's his nature. And so that karmic reaction is gone. And then whatever fruits that individual is getting, he will take for one's maintenance, and the rest he will offer as a sacrifice. So then the whole activity becomes an act of devotion. Just like Arjuna, for him the act of devotion is, he still has to have his duty. Later in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Arjuna, I don't have anything to achieve, right? Still I act. So that acting is, we cannot sit at one place and, even if you had all the time, you say you didn't have to work, you had enough savings. If you think, I'll just sit at one place and only chant and just read Bhagavatam, your mind will waver. You won't be able to do it. Now, that state will eventually come, when after doing all our life in Grihastha ashram, if we act according to our nature, right? And we are focused in a spiritual practice, naturally at certain point in time, in an organic way, one will develop renunciation. And then the idea of retirement, the real retirement, then your mind is stable and you're able to take it full time. But prematurely, it's not possible. That's exactly what Krishna is saying. You think, I don't want to deal with all this situation, I'll just go in a forest and meditate. That's not going to happen. By your nature, you'll be forced to act. So there's nothing wrong when you are doing your work that you're not able to focus or think about Krishna. I mean, it's, you rather want to focus on your work, so that you can do your work nicely. But what is more important is you chalk out certain time of your day, which for a practice, spiritual practice, which is fully, very focused. And then, your work according to your nature, you might already be, situated according to your nature, or you might not. And for some individuals, it's possible that they can change. For some, you might not be able to do it. So, that situation might be different for different individuals. I hope that gives you some insight.
Yeah, thank you. So the takeaway is, try to spend a dedicated time every day. So eventually, that stability will come into our life.
Right. And then offer results of your work.
Offer results of, okay.
Results of your work for spiritual purpose.
Thank you.
There was a question, Parulman. See your hand raised.
Yeah, so actually my question is along these lines, right? So we say all of our actions impact our actions and behaviors, and the impact of that on our spiritual advancement, right? So when you think about the action of kirtana or japa, right, or action of doing following the nature and doing what we're meant to do, there's also this guilt that comes in when you don't, when you're not doing things that will allow you to advance spiritually, right? And how does that guilt affect the spirit and the soul?
I mean, okay, if I understand your question right, sometimes we are not able to do enough for spiritual practice and we feel guilty. Is that a good
Correct.
feeling to have or not? So
Yeah.
all kind of emotions they are there are present in the spiritual world. So like the gopas or the gopis, they also experience guilt and the sorrow and the happiness. Everything is there. It's not that, that's why the difference between Brahman realization and the spiritual realization in the spiritual realm is that the Brahman realization is that you want to be devoid of all feelings. But the reality in Goloka Vrindavan is that all kind of feelings are there. Of course, envy is not there. That's one thing that cannot be engaged in service of Krishna. Otherwise, there is anger, there is guilt. But the center of all of that is Krishna. That's the difference. And so the guilt that I'm not able to do enough, I think it's a good guilt to have. Of course, we don't become so depressed and morose by it. Just like a student who wants to endeavor to get better performance, and that individual might think that, oh, I'm not putting enough hours to practice whatever I'm learning, right? And so of course that person doesn't have to become fully morose by it, but certain amount of that feeling is desirable. So that lolium, it's called greed. So the greed for being Krishna conscious is a good greed. There is a sloka, it says what is it? Krishna bhakti ras bhavitam matihi kriyate kriyate api. What is it? Krishna bhakti ras bhavitam matihi क्रियते अपि लभ्यते तत्र लोल्यम एकम मूल्यम जन्मकोटि सुकृति न लभ्यते. So he says the consciousness to think about Krishna all the time, Krishna bhakti rash bhavita mati, the intelligence to be focused on Krishna all the time. If it is available somewhere in any marketplace, you should purchase it at any price. So what is the price? What is the price that one needs to pay to purchase this? The one cannot purchase this even after accumulating pious activities for millions of births. How can one purchase it then? One can purchase it or achieve it by having extreme greed to have it. Tatra lolyam, ekam mulyam. There is only one value or the one price that one has to pay. Ekam mulyam. What is lolyam? Lolyam means an extreme desire to have it. So you have to cultivate the desire. So anytime we feel that I'm not doing enough, I think that's a sign of making progress, that we want to be able to do more, and sometimes we might not be able to do enough. But when we have that feeling that I'm not able to do enough, that will make us think and make us work to find out some means to do that. So I think that's a good feeling to have.
So I have one other question. So when you talk about act of giving or sacrifice, right, where you work to make a living, and then over time you do it because you've always done it, right, and you continue to do it, but then at that point, how do you give back, right? So can you talk a little bit about significance of giving time versus money versus action?
Yeah, so I think what ultimately matters is the emotions, that is important. Now somebody might say, that's why sometimes we see bhav hona chahiye, only you need is emotion, you don't have to do it. So that is a wrong interpretation. Well, if you have emotion, then you really want to do it also. So that emotion should reflect in action. Just like I said, I really care for my son, I really emotion, but I don't have to do it, because all it really matters is I need to have feelings. But then if I don't express those feelings, your relative is not going to be happy about it. It has to be expressed. Similarly, if I'm doing something for my family members, but if I don't have emotion, then they can also sense that, and then you're just doing it for the sake of doing, and you don't have love. So both are needed. But ultimately, feeling is what matters, and so the subtle emotions are ultimately important, but one might not directly have those feelings to begin with, right? So then where do you begin? You begin with action. So initially, even if you don't have love or feeling, it is recommended that even if one is doing mechanically, one can do the make donation or put time or energy, but do physically even without emotion. But love will slowly come, just like in the traditional Vedic system, when the marriage is done, it's not that the bride and the groom, they love each other, they might not even met, but the idea is that we both of them have to serve each other on the principle of dharma, and by spending time together and by serving, that love and affection naturally comes. So the same analogy Krishna says over here to Arjuna, is that first he talks about karma yoga. After talking about karma yoga, finally says, we'll see that in second and third chapter, he says ultimately the purpose of karma yoga is jnana. By doing your karma, you initially will do your karma, but you don't know why you're doing. You're doing it mechanically, but the idea is that eventually you will cultivate knowledge, and ultimately knowledge is important. And that's why Arjuna gets confused, and in the beginning of fourth chapter he says, Krishna, if you are saying knowledge is more important, then why you are forcing me to be engaged in this ghastly war? Why you again forcing me to get the karma? So Arjuna again misses the point. So if the gyan is there, then one have to act according to the knowledge. So it's that knowledge should reflect in karma. And initially one does not have knowledge, then it's advised, okay, you just do karma, and you eventually will cultivate knowledge. Just like a child, he does not know why he has to study. What's the purpose of studying, right? He does not understand the goal, the means, the purpose. But what will happen is, if he says, I don't understand that, so I will stop doing it, then the child is not going to make progress. But he has to start somewhere, keep mechanically doing it. When the child grows up, eventually that individual will realize. So to answer your question, what really matters is it time, is it energy, is it money, or is it action? Ultimately, we want all of them, to be to be applied, right? So we want to serve Krishna with our mind, our body, our intelligence, our time. Everything needs to be offered, and all of that might not happen immediately, but we have to start somewhere. And so even if initially we might not have love or affection, and if you're just doing it mechanically, that's nothing wrong with it, but ultimately, organically, the emotion and the love should naturally come. Now, if you think logically, right, obviously, if you want to, just like if you Krishna is a person, right? So you have to think in a very personal way. So anything that is actually, I'll give you an example. Suppose there is if you go to a friend's home, or in India there are weddings, right? So one might bring a nice gift for the couple who just got married, and that is appreciated. Now if somebody gives, in India we have this custom, you might give 1,000 rupees, 5,000 rupees, you put in an envelope and give it, right? So that might appear a little impersonal, in the sense that, okay, everyone is giving money. So obviously, similarly, when we want to offer and please Krishna, of course you can give money, and that donation is also appreciated. But you might personally go and choose nice deity dresses, and then, well, you don't know where to get it. Maybe you can ask pujari, where can I find nice deity dresses? And you can go and personally choose, well, this dress would look nice, and then you buy it, and then you offer. Then there is more love and emotion even in that very action, because now you personally chose it. Now if somebody has the skills of weaving and embroidery, and if they personally make it and offer, that's even better. But it's understandable that not everyone has those kind of skills. And so, but they can, if they are able to spend time and energy in going and personally choosing those deity dresses, or having it custom made, then there's, just in that act, there is more love and devotion involved. And other could be that one says, okay, how much does deity dress cost? Okay, this costs this much, I'll sponsor it. That's another way. And but you can see there is a qualitative difference between these three examples. Of course, all of them are act of service, and it is appreciated that in whatever level one is offering, that's all right. Sometimes one might not even have time to do that, and they might just give a monetary contribution, and that's all right. But ultimately, the idea is that we want to be able to serve in all possible means. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions anyone has?
Actually, I have one other question in relation to that. So I think, like, if you look at Christianity, for example, right? They say that, like, one of the things they say is you should give 10% of what you make, right, to church, right? So I'm wondering if there is any such kind of guidance or in Hindu scriptures.
Yeah. So if you think of it, see, traditionally there is the money is not involved, right? If you look at Vedic system, like so Brahmanas especially, they don't even have salary, right? And they get charity in terms of clothes or cows. The kings would give them cows. They might have a piece of land that is given to them that they cultivate. The Kshatriyas, they are maintained by the king and the administration, right? And so they might have quarters that they are given. The food is arranged. The Vaishyas, Krishi, Goraksha, Vanijyam. So Vaishyas, they are primarily doing farming, and they raise cows and milks. And then there is a lot of barter that goes on in the village kind of economy, where you take cloth from the weaver and you give the grains to them, and um, the laborers, they are just serving the other classes, and they are maintained. It's not that they get a salary. Actually, they are provided quarters, and they are provided a means of subsistence. And so all the surveys, traditionally what is offered is all direct. There's again more love and devotion involved, because the weaver is weaving the cloth and offering to the local deity, right, to make clothes. And the grains are offered for fire sacrifices. They are offered in charity. And so there's not, again, it's all need based, right? So you're giving to Brahmana, and as much as one is able to give, they are giving. So there is no such concept as such. But if you talk about, if you want to assign any percentages, I'm talking about more recent times. That's still a couple of hundred years ago. So we have the 6 Goswamis, who were the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and they discovered so many lost places in Vrindavan, which were the places where Krishna performed different pastimes, and then they stayed there as a renunciant, wrote all the Gaudiya scriptures. So Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, they were ministers earlier. They were born in Brahmana family, but they were very well learned. But they were ministers in the Muslim government before they took to spiritual life after meeting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So they had accumulated a lot of wealth, and then I think they used eventually for service and charity, and they were paid in gold coins. And so one of the recommendations that they did, that is said, if I remember it correctly, said 50% for personal maintenance, and then I think it was 25% for emergencies, and then 25% charitable purposes. So that's one quotation from one of the acharyas, still 400 years ago, that we see. Now in the present era, it is very difficult. One of the symptoms of Kali Yuga is the Grihasthas, they don't have much savings. It's extremely difficult. There is this verse in Srimad Bhagavatam. He says, Abatava vrata asaucha viksavascha kutumbina tapasvino grama vasa nyashino tirtha lolupa. He says the Brahmanas in Kali Yuga, is very difficult for them to keep the vows of either celibacy or austerity, cleanliness. Not Brahmana, brahmacharis. So you have 4 phases of life, right? Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanprastha, and Sannyas. So brahmacharis are supposed to be celibates, but in the Kali Yuga, it's so difficult for to maintain that vow. Bhiksavascha kutumbina. So kutumbina means family, householders. For them, they are almost like beggars. So that is a symptom of earlier in the traditional Vedic system, the Grihasthas, they maintain all the 3 ashrams. Because the brahmachari is celibate, he doesn't have means of income, so the Grihasthas are maintaining the brahmacharis. Grihasthas are also maintaining those who are vanprasth. Vanprasth, they go from one village to one forest, they open their home, somebody might come and stay in their home that night. Similarly, sannyasis who might come and stay for some time, they give charity, and they had so much wealth, and wealth not in terms of money, but you have grains and other produce that they are able to share, and so the stock, real stock is a livestock, not these the shares. And yeah, the one again, I don't want to talk about, yeah, so the vanprasthas, they are not living in the forest, they're mostly staying in villages, and the sannyasis, they are more interested in money. So there are symptoms of Kali Yuga. So how do we see that? So there is all kind of debt. Earlier there was no debt economy, right? So the mortgage is a debt. When there might be a student loan, that's a debt. There is credit card debt, and there is a the car loans there. So the entire economy is structured that even you might be earning $200,000, but all of that just goes in paying off the debt. So one has to see what is possible, uh, and everyone's situation is different. So based on whatever one is comfortable and realistically able to offer, they should offer. There are individuals who are able to, are fortunate enough because of their past karma or activities, they earn well and they have savings, and ultimately what matters is percentage. It's not, somebody might be offering hundreds and thousands of dollars, but they might be making billions of dollars or millions of dollars, and as a percentage that might be small amount. So to the extent that we are able to serve, uh, you know monetarily, or ultimately, as I said, love is important, right? So if you are able to weave those clothes, for instance, or just come to the temple or cook for the deities, that's an act of love, and that goes way beyond monetary contribution. But if somebody is able to do monetary contribution, they can do it. So that's no, though that 25% was mentioned, I believe, by Rupa Goswami, we have to apply it according to our context, how much we are able to do. I hope that answers your
Yes,
question.
it does. Thank you.
Okay. Any other question anyone has? It's all good questions, by the way. Okay. No more questions. Let's finish this. Killing the body of anyone without authority is abominable and is punishable by the law of state as well as by the law of the Lord. Arjuna, however, is being engaged in killing of for the principle of religion and not whimsically. So that's the crux of the verse. It's a little bit long verse. I don't think I want to start. I think we are almost time, so you can take maybe other questions or comments if anyone has for a few minutes, or else we can take a break and continue next time. I know next week is Thanksgiving, and generally Thanksgiving, Christmas are like big events. People have plans, they travel, and typically we have that long weekend off. And it just, I mean, this time it's pandemic, so I'll just leave it up to you guys. If you want to vote and have any opinion, if you want to take a break, that's all right. If you want to continue, then we can continue as well. Anyone, how many of you would want to have a class next Saturday? You can raise your hand. So we have 10 individuals. 1, 2. Okay, only 2.
Did you say have a class or not have a class?
Have. Those who would like to have a class can raise your hand. Okay, 3. Okay, only 3 individuals. 4. Molly, you don't have Thanksgiving. You're in Australia.
No, I don't have.
So would you like to have the class?
Yeah, we can continue with the same. Actually, I have an exam in that time.
Oh, okay. So you have other reasons. Okay, so we have 4 individuals and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's kind of little less than 50%. So right now, majority is more like you don't want to have the class. So no, not 10. It's 9, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, I can count myself, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Well, right now majority does not want a class. So I don't know. Is it okay? Let me think. I'll think over the week and let you know. So you want to say something, Soma?
No, I just wanted to say sure.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, theoretically we could continue, I guess. Others might have to go through recording, but I'll let you know earlier in the week, maybe by Tuesday, what we should do.
Thank you.
Okay. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare
Hare
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank you.
Krishna.